Welcome, everybody. My name is Ben, and this is Sachin. And we're incredibly excited to talk to you today about the future of app development with Rayfin. So I'm sure everybody in this room is probably familiar with the fact that agentic coding is really transforming application development, and it's really democratizing who can build applications. So I coach a U5 girls soccer team, the 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, Hamsters, with a very good friend, Brent. And Brent is not a software engineer by any means, but a few months ago, he discovered agentic coding. And he just started spitting out applications. So he's building season stats apps, he's building snack schedules, he's building practice plans. And for me, as somebody who got into software development because I love to make things, it's incredibly fun and inspiring to see the Brents of the world all of a sudden become makers. And I think that's the power of agentic coding. It has the ability to turn the Brents of the world into makers, and it has the ability to turn existing software engineers into kind of super makers. But as you go from coding a kid's soccer app into a corporate environment where you're dealing with real customer data and real compliance needs, all of a sudden sort of the opportunity of vibe coding, the promise of it starts to sort of fall apart. And that, so if you're a software engineer, apps in the enterprise, you find they need more than just kind of good vibes. As a software engineer, you need to build databases with real authentication. You need to configure backend services. You need to safely connect to existing customer data. And you need to be able to do all of this while following your company's compliance and governance rules. And if you're on the IT admin side of things, it's even more complicated in this new world. You have to make sure that only the right people have the right access to the right data. And it's really on you to make sure that you're maintaining your company's security and compliance posture. And that's why we built Rayfin. So Rayfin is the backend for this new AI coding era. It makes it easy for a human and an agent to define an entire backend in code. So it's an SDK and CLI. You can author the backend in code, so that includes your database, your functions, your storage, your access policies are all defined in code. So it's easy for both the agent and a human to be able to understand and operate it. And when you're ready to deploy that application, you can do so with just a single CLI command and deploy it right to Microsoft Fabric, where all those resources are provisioned and managed for you, and you get enterprise-grade security, compliance, right out of the gate. So let's stop sort of talking around it. Let's do a quick demo of what this actually looks like. Let's say I work for 𝗲𝗲, a home improvement store, and we have a CEO who's very excitable, and he is super pumped about launching a new home delivery service. So for the first time, I can now get my hammers and nails and everything else delivered directly to my door, which is great, but now we need a whole suite of applications to make that possible. So we need an application for our delivery service drivers. We need apps for the management to be able to actually monitor how this service is performing. And as the software engineer, all of a sudden, all of this falls on me to build. So fortunately, I have Rayfin, and I can open up my VS Code editor with a terminal window open, and with a simple Rayfin create command, I can start to create a project that is built to have not only a beautiful front end like agents are so good at, but also a great back end as well. So I'll go ahead and walk through the setup. And it's going to ask me to choose a template. And right now we have a couple basic starter templates to begin with. I'll go ahead and choose the blank app template. And I'll give the project a name. In this case, I'll just call it delivery app. And at this point, it is scaffolding my project. So it's adding all the files I need to build both the front end and the back end of the application, including the agent instructions on how to use the Rayfin SDK and CLI. So now I'll just CD into my project. And at this point, I'm going to call Rayfin up. And what that command is doing is it's actually going and provisioning all of those resources right in Fabric. So I now have my database and my application running in Fabric. And I can now run my local development environment pointing towards those remote resources. And so this is where it gets to be fun. This is where you get to just tell an agent the application that you actually want to go build. So in this case, I'm going to go tell it to build that delivery app. So I'm going to say build a delivery app. And this is going to be for the 𝗲𝗲 delivery drivers. And I want them to be able to log deliveries with photos and item conditions. And then I want to be able to have customers be able to actually confirm receipt. So we'll do a little sort of build demo magic here, and we're going to jump forward to where we've actually finished completing that application development with the agent. Great, so I have a finished application at this point, and I can see that it's created a bunch of TypeScript files that are actually defining my tables and all their properties right here in code. And I'm going to go ahead and go visit that application in Fabric. OK, so I can see that it built the delivery application that I was hoping for. It lets a driver come to a house like with a tablet and be able to have a customer actually sign off and confirm deliveries. So let's go ahead and do that. OK, so I've confirmed the delivery. And I could also open this application outside of the Fabric Chrome, so it gets its own URL as well. Let's just look at that. Great, so I've got the application I want. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Fabric, you'll be familiar with Fabric workspaces. And that's where basically all of your items and artifacts live. So that's the nice, convenient way of managing all those items and artifacts. So let's go to our 𝗲𝗲 workspace. And I can see that there is a new delivery app artifact that was created, as well as a child SQL database. So if I go into that child SQL database, I should see that new delivery recorded right there in the database. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And perfect, I can see that the new delivery item ended up right there in my SQL database. OK, so now I'm going to hand it over to Sachin, who's going to walk in to a bit more detail of how all of this works under the hood. Go for it, Sachin.
Thanks, Ben. All right, so you saw how Ben was able to build a complete application with a front end, with a database. He was able to build it with agent, then deploy it into Fabric, and you got the database spun up, et cetera. So I want to walk you through exactly how that happens. So let's go back to the code that Ben's agent generated, the delivery class. And there's like a few interesting things to point out here. So the first thing you see is the entity decorator on the class, and that's what tells Rayfin that this is going to be a database table inside Fabric. And you also have the property decorators, which kind of hint towards what will be the type of the column, as well as the min-max kind of get translated to column constraints on the database itself. You can also specify relationships, but what's also interesting is how do you specify security, right? So security as well can be done inside code, and so you can specify a role decorator on top, and then specify a policy function. And in this case, what it's telling you is that only authenticated users can see deliveries and only their own. And what if I'm making changes to this data model? So like say I get rid of a column or I change the data model entirely. Rayfin will detect that change and we will go and translate and do the migration for you, so you don't have to go and manage and maintain separation migration scripts as well. So I'm going to walk you through the configuration file of YAML and kind of show you a few more interesting characteristics about Rayfin. So what you notice here is that it's data, the dialect is Microsoft SQL. So currently, when you deploy a Rayfin app into Fabric, the Fabric SQL server gets spun up, and so it uses that as your database. In future, we will also support other dialects. For example, we'll be bringing in Postgres, and so you'll be able to, then your application will be able to spin up a Postgres SQL database. And that is just a configuration change, so you don't have to have like your application code, the way you declare your entities, the way you do permissioning, everything remains exactly the same. Another interesting thing is we do deploy the application as the front end and the back end, right? So when Ben was building his delivery application, the front end was in Fabric, the back end was in Fabric, and that's pretty convenient to go do. But internally, they deploy a separate thing. So you could have your front end hosted on a different, say, in Azure, and you could have custom domains, et cetera, on it. You can also have applications share the same backend. So you could deploy a backend by itself, and then you could build 2 different applications on top of it. And that's what you see here with the scopes. And so you can have different sort of scopes on application A versus B. So you could have application A only read data, while you could have application B that could read and write data to it as well. And then you also have some authentication options. So right now, all apps require Fabric authentication, but in the future, we will allow you to publish apps that are anonymous or use other sort of authentication providers like Gmail, et cetera. So you could imagine a scenario where you're building an application for an external customer to log into and sign up and do things, but you want the data to land into your Fabric tenant, so the business users within the organizations could perform downstream analytics on that data. But often, so what we saw until now was, okay, you have an app, and you can easily spin up a backend, you can spin up a database, you can read and write from it. But that's not often where people start. People want to be able to connect to existing data that they already have. They want to be able to operate on that data, read it, and write to it. And so we've introduced the notion of connectors, which allow you to connect to any data that is in the Fabric One Lake. And that can be databases, that can be warehouses, semantic models. And depending on the data source, you will be able to also write back to it. And so you declare that data source into your configuration. So this is my connector. I'm kind of connecting to this data source. We also have agent instructions that help you pull in these tables and create classes for them so you get type safety when dealing with this data. It also doesn't just pull in all of your data. So you could have a semantic model with hundreds of tables. But in this case, I'm only interested in building a view for order detail. So it'll just pull in that schema from that table, kind of create the types for it so you can use it in the application. But it's not always about data, right? So you want to be able to execute some sort of logic. Say you want to fire off a notification. You want to go connect to an external service, and you don't want this code to be running in the browser. So you want this code to be in the backend where you can safely inject credentials into it so you can run it. And we still let you create and define the function in TypeScript. So you can write your TypeScript logic. Your app can call it as if it was just part of its code. But when you deploy it with Rayfin up, it takes that function block. It deploys it as a Fabric function. So it runs in a secure sandbox. And then you can go and do that, trigger off that notification or connect to external services and data. So what Ben showed you earlier was he was starting from scratch. I think he used a built-in template. And so templates allow you to both not always start from a blank application, but it also allows you to standardize applications for your organization. So maybe your organization is trying to build dashboards, and you want them to look and behave a particular way, and you don't want to burn too many tokens on just publishing style guides that they will read into. What you can do is you can create a template that anyone in the organization can use. And templates can be also checked into a repository, so you can share it with the community, so anyone can reference a template that's out there to get started really easily. What does the template contain? So a template might contain tools, so API definitions or MCP servers, and then you have agent instructions that tell you how to go operate these tools to generate additional context, etc. It also comes with some sample code, so your agent is not spending a ton of time scaffolding logic. It can also contain libraries, so if you want, for example, to pull in a particular kind of charting library for your data application, you can. One of the most common things enterprise organizations will build as data apps would be dashboards. And so we partnered with the Power BI team to build just that. So I'd like to invite Sujata on stage to talk about it.
Thanks, everyone. So how many here in the audience are excited to build analytics apps? Yeah, a few? And I think the reality is a lot of enterprise applications tend to start with analytics. And what Rayfin is doing is something really groundbreaking. Because for years, applications and analytics lived in separate worlds, right? You had one team build your analytics stack, and you had another team build your applications. But Rayfin brings that together. And now our data app template does something really unique because it's allowing you to build applications directly on your semantic layer. This means all of the effort that you put into your semantic model and building your analytics stack can now be reused for your applications. And let's talk a little bit more in depth of what the data app template is. So if you look at our template, there's 3 core components. First is a data package. And what this does is really make sure that we're normalizing things like the Fabric endpoint connection, how we're doing query retries, caching. So a lot of those foundational steps to making sure you're connecting to your enterprise data and you're querying it well, the data package provides that. Next, we have a visual package. So this is using a React and Vega-like components to get AI-first visuals that are extremely flexible. And not only that, they have enterprise-grade defaults. So like Sachin mentioned, this was built by the Power BI team, which has years of data viz experience to really make sure that these visuals shine and meet enterprise-grade requirements. And of course, last but not least, we have agent skills. So the agent skills teaches your coding agent how to use these packages, and not just how to use them in terms of building your dashboards and applications, but how to use them effectively. So building applications that actually have good taste. Because let's be honest, we don't just want a functional dashboard, we want something that is going to impress your boss and impress anyone that's going to use it. And so enough of me talking about what this is, let's actually go and see a demo of this. So let's start off here. So our CEO loved the app that Ben built. So woo, good job, Ben. He really loved it. But as any CEO, they always want more. And so the next thing our CEOs asked is build me an operational dashboard so I can see if customers are actually loving this new delivery experience. And so let's take a look at that experience. So to start with, I'm in the Fabric portal. And like I mentioned, this is about bringing that shared experience for analytics and turning it into an application. So in Fabric, I already have a ton of semantic models, and I want to build applications on top of these semantic models. And Ben showed you the CLI experience of how you can do that, but let's see how we can also start that from within Fabric. So to start with, let me go to my workspace, and then let me go ahead and click New Item. And here's where you're going to see that new artifact type called app. And let's go ahead and give this a name. So I want this to be my analysis app. I'm just going to go ahead and click Create. And you'll notice here, you're going to given a few choice of templates here. Like Sachin mentioned, is you could start from the blank app, but might as well make your job easier. If you're trying to build a data app, start with our template. So if you pick the data app template, you're going to automatically get the scaffolding to make sure that you're able to query your semantic model, connect to it, and also make sure that you get those enterprise-grade visuals. So once I have this template selected, I'm going to go ahead and copy the prompt, and then I'm going to switch over to VS Code. So using Copilot and the coding agent within VS Code, I'm going to go ahead and paste that prompt. And then I'm going to hit Enter. And so now what's happening is it's basically scaffolding that data app so that I can get ready to build my analytics app of my choice. And once the scaffolding is done, here's where the fun part happens. Because now all I need to do is provide the requirements of what I'm trying to build. So in this case, I want to build a analytics app so that I can look at the satisfaction of my customers. And so I'm using that existing semantic model. So I just put a link to that semantic model. And I say that I'm trying to analyze the customer satisfaction. And because this is an app, I can also make it really actionable. So I can even add a button like a flag button to be able to escalate issues to my product team. And just for some quick demo magic, I'm going to quickly fast forward some of this. But of course, you may want to iterate with your agent until you get your idea right. And once that's done, let's go ahead and take a look at the app we've built. So let's open it up in Fabric. And here you see a full-blown analytics app that's created with just a few prompts. And the beauty of this too is I did not have to prompt for the detailed things of, oh, I want it to like look a certain way or move this visual here, move this visual there. Like I'm relying on the coding agent to do a lot of this formatting for me. So it saves me a ton of time, and I also don't need to be a design expert to create something that looks as polished as this. And like I mentioned, because this is an application, you can get a lot more flexibility of being able to have custom actions directly in your app. So for example, I wanted to be able to flag or escalate issues to the rest of my product team. So the app added a button here, or I added a button here in the app to flag those issues and go ahead and email the product team. So the beauty of what you're getting is you're getting an analytics app that also combines the actions that you would expect for any sort of data-driven application. So what we're doing is really tying the loop between how you take data and transform it into action. And with that, I'll pass it back to Sachin.
Thanks, Sujata. All right, so you saw two applications being built, one more of an operational delivery app and an analytics application. And both of them use Rayfin to define their data API, their backend and code, and then the services get deployed to Fabric. So why is Fabric so good for building these applications? So one of the greatest advantages of Fabric is that everything inside Fabric already has your enterprise-grade security rules and compliance defined on all of these artifacts, right? And one of the things in Fabric is that all of the artifact data lives inside one lake. So the way to think about one lake is that it's the one drive for data. And since this application is now also living in Fabric using the Fabric artifacts, that means all of your application's data also lands in one lake, which means that if a business user wanted to get access to this data to do some data science or do downstream analytics, they have easy access to get to this data. As well as you can build applications that then consume that data as well. So this kind of makes it really easy for both your applications as well as your analytical data to kind of live in the same security boundary. Fabric by default is a SaaS offering, so all the infrastructure is easy to provision, and there's not much for you to manage. The other thing about Fabric is the way you consume anything as Fabric is you buy Fabric capacity, and then you can assign a certain amount of compute to any of those artifacts. And now you can take the same capacity that you've been using for your analytical workloads, and you can also assign it to your applications. So, any database operations, any queries, all of them get built towards one capacity, so you don't have to manage multiple meters. While Fabric runs everything in the cloud, when you're developing your application, you run things locally, right? So anything that you're developing, be it functions or be it your web app, anything that contains user code is developed locally. And for the underlying services, you have two options. So you can either spin them up in a dev workspace in Fabric, or you can run it inside a local Docker container, which is currently experimental. And when you do Rayfin up, it will package the whole thing, and then you can put it in a production workspace. And you can sort of use that same workflow to also move from dev, staging to production. So you can create a bunch of workspaces in Fabric, and you can develop in one, and you feel good about it. You can take the same application and then move it into staging, production, and so forth. And so Fabric is the easiest and best way for you to build secure enterprise applications and operate on them. But we understand that that there might be a need for people to be able to self-host their applications. And so for that, we'll be open sourcing part of the Rayfin runtime, and we look to the community to be able to build this with us so you can run the self-hosted applications on various types of infrastructure. So AI has changed the way that people are building applications, but not just in terms of how quick it is to go build an application, but also who can build an application. And not everyone lives anymore inside an IDE or a CLI. Replit is one of the easiest tools to use to go build and realize these ideas. And so we're really excited to partner with Replit. I would like to invite Carl on stage, who's the tech lead at Replit, to talk a lot more about this.
Hey everyone, I'm Carl, and I'm the technical lead at Replit, helping lead the integration with both Rayfin and Fabric. So for those who don't know, Replit is an agentic browser-based IDE where non-technical and semi-technical users can build apps. So Rayfin and Fabric are great for the technical business user who's extremely technical, wants to get into the code, but Replit's here for the users who don't maybe have that coding experience, who still want to be able to build and deploy these apps. Let's see, we do this with enterprise-grade privacy and security. All the apps that are built with Replit inherit all of those same security properties that were just described. Instead of talking about it though, let me show you how it works. So here's an example of building an app with Replit. I'm going to spin up a dashboard for our stand-up in an hour. I'm going to give it the Power BI model, the semantic model, and let the agent go to work. Here you can see the model doing its work. It looks at the schemas within that semantic model and builds the dashboard, including the DAX queries underneath, directly from that content. And then you can see we can deploy this directly into our Rayfin environment. So this is deploying into Rayfin, and we'll have the live app with the same workspace and item objects that you would expect on the back end. And so you can manage this entirely from Replit for non-technical and semi-technical users. Right now we're in private beta, so we have a couple users using it. And here's a quote from one of our test users, Leatherman. Leatherman is a company that's both an avid user of Replit already and an avid user of Fabric. And here's what they had to say. We appreciate how quickly we can build and iterate with Replit, but for some of our business, our data needs to stay governed and centralized in Fabric. With Rayfin, we finally have both. Fast development in the tools we prefer and the confidence that our applications run on top of our enterprise data platform. This is exactly what we've been looking for. So yesterday we announced the partnership between Replit and Microsoft on stage with Satya. And today I'm just wanted to be here, and I'm super excited and grateful to be working with the team from Microsoft to kick this all off. And I'm going to turn it back over to Ben, and he's going to wrap us up. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Carl. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this session, and now I want to just sort of break down where we're at, what's going to be released over the next couple days, and then sort of where we're going. And so right now, the focus is really on making it easy for people to build enterprise applications. So giving you sort of all of those core fundamental building blocks to be able to do that, giving you the database, the enterprise auth out of the box, making it so it's easy to deploy all of that to Fabric in a managed tenant. And then we're looking at, okay, where do we go from there? So very soon, we will add support for functions, for RBAC, for additional data connectors. So you'll be able to connect to any data within OneLake and blob storage as well. And so at that point, you'll really kind of have the full suite of capabilities you need to run enterprise applications. So we will have moved from building largely internal applications, sort of data dashboards, things like that, to kind of whatever you want to build within an enterprise tenant. But we want to be able to do more than that. So as we look forward to the end of the year, we want to support more B2B and B2C scenarios. And so that's where we move beyond just having intra-auth to having OIDC auth, to having real-time services. We also want to make it easier and easier to get started with Rayfin. So we'll be letting you get started not using an intra or a company ID, but you can actually use a social login to get started, and we'll have a perpetual free tier offering as part of that as well. Right now, you can go use Fabric for free to get started as well, so we encourage everybody to go do that. Okay, so that's what's next for us. What's next for you? So there is one last Rayfin session available later today at 3 o'clock. Chris Anderson from our team will be walking through it. I love that. And then the biggest thing we want, though, is for you to go try it. So go kick the tires and, okay, sorry about the Teams messages coming up. And we're really looking for the community to help build this with us. So we're looking for your feedback. We want you to go try building apps right now. So you can go to github.com/Microsoft/Rayfin to start trying it and give us your feedback. And then you can also sign up for the Replit private preview as well and get started with that. I'll just pause for a second there. Let all my Teams messages go away. All right, beautiful. And so that's it from us. Thank you so much for listening to the Rayfin talk, and we're really excited to go see what you build with Rayfin. Thank you all.